class, then I can create my regular application. So I have my SQL. I have my SQL application here. Pretty much, it's your regular vanilla MySQL. So you have your service, you have a persistent claim, persistent volume claim from that storage class that I created, and you have your application itself. So let's just create that. And right now, if I do get PVC, you see that it created my SQL volume and it's bounded. And if I do this here, I can see that my MySQL is running. So that it is. So I have just to summarize, I create a root cluster. The root cluster created the root. I created a root operator. The root operator created a root cluster. Then storage array was created, and then I created an application that consumed it by using persistent volume claim. That's the demo. So if I go back to the presentation. So what's next for us? So what next is that we want to create a root volume plugin. And this is kind of to enforce our message that not only we want to be part of Kubernetes, not only we want to be inside of Kubernetes, but we also want to integrate deeply with Kubernetes. And we feel that by having our own volume plugin will give us that fine control for Rook and become more seamless integrated with Kubernetes. We're also looking at features like cloning, backup, snapshot for the future. Nope. And as most other services within Kubernetes, we also want to integrate to monitoring system like Prometheus. So that's something that we're currently looking at. And just before I finish, we introduced this Rook project on QCON last November in Seattle, and we got a lot of feedback from the community. And we took those feedback, and we implemented a lot of that within Rook right now. We also maintain great consistent communication with folks within the community, folks like from CoreOS, from Google, Heptio, etc. So we're growing. Right now, our GitHub we have more than 1,000 GitHub stars. So we do have a lot of traction right now, and people following us, and we have developers who are deploying Rook in the development environment, trying out and giving us feedback. So this is really good. So if you have any question, I'm here to answer. I also have some folks that I work with here on the call who are smarter than me and who can also help answer questions. So. Any questions or?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
How do you assign storage resources on the node to Rook? How does it know, for example, how much storage to allocate from a given node from where?
Sorry, so your question, can you repeat the question again?
How do you assign storage resources on a given node to Rook?
Okay, so within Rook, we deploy OSD, as Damon said. So every node that you have, that you deem part of the cluster, and that can be done with labeling, it would implement, it will bring up a OSD, and then based on that, any devices or any hard drive on that node will become part of the root cluster. Is that your question? Did I answer it?
I see. So basically, the whole storage on the local node is part of the pool.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
How does it detect what's available?
How does it detect what's available? So what it does is
Hi, Steve. This is Travis. You want me to take this?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're right now we detect, we mount dev/dev so we can have access to the volumes that are there. And today we just automatically see what volumes are available, and if it doesn't look like they're in use, we use them. But this is one of the next features we're working on to make it flexible, so the admin of the cluster can specify Rook can use this one and don't use this one, or use this directory use this directory or device. Anyway, so that flexibility is coming soon, but in our early release, it's still it's a little aggressive right now in how it takes over devices, but coming soon.
Cool. Thank you, Travis. I couldn't have said that better.
Hi, this is Vinod from Portfolio. I had a couple of questions. The first was actually, how do you export block storage? Is there a kernel module that is involved, or what kind of protocol do you use to actually, how does Ceph export block storage? The second was that it's completely unrelated, but it was, I noticed that there are some nodes that show up as Cephmon and some nodes show up as Ceph MDS. How are these nodes picked? What happens when this node goes, what happens if the monitor goes down? Or what happens if the MDS goes down? And how does it get rescheduled on a different node? And how does it have its data that it originally had?
Yeah, for the second question there around what happens when the MDS go down or the other services, the operator, so our Rook operator, that's it's really the automation around making sure, whatever an administrator would do in the cluster, the operator will watch, make sure the services are running, but also use native Kubernetes resources like replica sets. So, if we need one MDS running, for example, and if it fails, well, Kubernetes will just automatically reschedule that somewhere else.
Right. So just to follow up on that, I understand that the application itself will be rescheduled somewhere else, but it requires to persist its configuration data, or it's metadata. So how does the newly spun up instance get its metadata?
So it'll, the metadata is stored in Kubernetes resources such as secrets and config maps. Those and when the pod starts, it'll get those resources from those Kubernetes, the Kubernetes metadata, really.
I see.
Yeah. And it's still early days, so there's more of that type of work to do to make sure that all the failover works, but that's the plan.
Got it. And for the first question, as to how's the actual block device exported to the host file system or to the host namespace?
Jared, are you there? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's currently in the demo that you just saw from Steve. That's using the RBD plugin. That's due to the entry plugin that's already available there. Then we saw a bit of the experience around that, where Steve needed to give it certain data like monitor IP addresses. Or needs some CephX credentials to be able to for that kernel module to be able to talk to the Ceph cluster and surface up that storage in a block device format. So that we see a little bit of better integration that could be possible with a Rook plugin for that specifically. But it is the RBD entry plugin.
Got it.
Okay, so if there's no more question, thanks. You know how to find us, please try it out and give us your feedback, because we're really excited into making this project part of Kubernetes. So, thank you guys.
Great, thank you, Steve. Okay, so moving on to design reviews. We don't have any currently listed on the agenda, but is there anything out there that anyone wants to discuss?
Sure, I have something. So with the Flex Volume interface being developed, is there, hypothetically, if you were designing a volume plugin starting today, is there a reason to use the entry versus to use the Flex Volume? Like what are the advantages and disadvantages there? And are the entry volume plugins eventually going to be moved to the Flex volume interface? Is that a plan, or is that a possibility?
Yes.
In the future?
So the plan is to keep as much stuff out of tree as possible. It's kind of unfortunate that any in-tree plugin touches about 300 different files and requires about 15,000 lines of code. So it's first off, it's kind of a nightmare getting the in-tree, getting a new plugin reviewed and actually committed in-tree. And then, we have stabilization issues and testing issues that come along with it. So, kind of our long-term strategy is to keep stuff out of tree if possible using Flex. And right now we're, I don't know, maybe 90% feature complete on Flex compared to the in-tree stuff. Shockley's done a lot of work for 1.6 to have the attached detached controller working with the Flex volume plugin, as before was just the node. So you should, in theory, be able to implement anything with Flex that you could do in tree. Now, if you come across bugs, we've had a couple of requests for attached detach to include pod or namespace along with it, pod or namespace information. And I think that's something that we're looking at doing a patch for, possibly before 1.7 or for sure as part of 1.7. But you really should be able to do everything with Flex right now. And that's the preferred route.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
If you have questions while you're working on it, feel free to reach out. We've a couple of people here have done Flex implementations, so we're pretty close to the code, so we're not really sure where our documentation pain points are, or where some of the complications are at. So it would be helpful if, while you're doing any kind of implementation, to ask questions so we know what to document or, what might have holes in it.
Sure, I am. I got most of an entry. Well, I do have an entry plugin working, but our issue specifically is that we are a smaller company by headcount, and the Flex volume interface is a simpler contract. And if I moved out the project or leave, the next person that comes in and works on it is going to have an easier time updating it or understanding the API layer, and that's why I'd like to switch over to using the Flex interface. But that's basically it. I mean, is there a preferred person to talk to?
Hey, this is Chakri. Actually, you can ping me on. If you're planning to use the Flex interface, feel free to ping me anytime. I'm on the Kubernetes Slack channel.
Okay, absolutely. I'll probably hit you up today.
Okay.
Also, I don't know the nature of the file system you're trying to connect to, but we do have an external storage repository now where we can house external provisioners or, community interest Flex volume plugins. So if you have like an open source or a public or some kind of file system type that's, available to the community and other people might find interest in, you also have the option of, putting in a more public repo too.
Well,
sure. This is going to be for a block. It's a DRBD, like the new version of DRBD, DRBD 9, and it's management utility. That's what this is for. So it is. So DRBD 9 and DRBD Manage, which is going to be the interface that the volume plugin uses to talk to DRBD. That's all open source. The Flex volume is not, as of yet, in a public place. We tend to have a good, just as a policy, we tend to have a good implementation out there that is stable before we put it in a public Git, just so people don't pull it and work with something that's not been vetted by us.
Okay, cool.
My thoughts on Flex versus in-tree. If you already have 90% of the in-tree done, I would probably go with in-tree because it's far less likely to break in the future. Whereas when we rev the Flex drivers, since the API is still alpha, we could potentially break your drivers. And that would require you to make sure that your driver gets updated and basically worry about all the versioning and everything yourself. While we have in-tree volumes, we basically make sure that if there's any breaking changes that they compile and we fix any existing drivers. But I guess what Brad's getting at is we should probably stop adding new in-tree drivers at this point. Is that what you're going to do?
Yeah, well, and especially for things that we don't have full public access to, right?
Yeah.
If we do refactorings, we can't go and make, we can't do business out.
We're kind of in this funky, like we talk about this almost every SIG meeting, and especially the SIG face-to-face meetings. We're in this halfway transition point, and there are pros and cons on whether you're a provider or whether we as Kubernetes maintainers, we all want to get to Flex out of tree as soon as possible. We're not there. And if you're a provider, there is pros to having yourself in tree, just for the reasons that Saad just said. But as the maintainers, we really are trying to restrict what can be done in tree, because if it's hard to maintain, or exactly what you just said, as a provider, you're a small company and you're not sure about, the maintenance of burden on yourself, these are the sort of things that we think about when we are deciding what ones in tree to accept. As the provider, you're kind of balancing I want to ensure compatibility with Kubernetes as much as possible, but then again, there is this sort of wasted work that you'll be doing now to get in that early access that as we go to Flex, you're going to undo. There's like double work that has to be done. The transition period, unfortunately, is probably going to go on at least a couple more quarters, but it's where we're at. I think we see the light at the head of the tunnel now. It's really nice that the work that Chakri has been leading and driving, but we're not there yet. And that's really just stage one, where I think stage two then is, once we've got Flex as this abstraction, then moving to the out of tree, abstraction and implementation.
Right, and I guess that's my concern, is to go through the process of getting the driver entry and then 6 months later having to implement the Flex volume anyway.
You will have to do that. That's
right.
Not a concern, right? That's a certainty.
Right, so
it's
certainty.
a value call on your side, and then as Brad was bringing up the case, there's a value call also on the Kubernetes maintainer side for how many of these do we want to keep putting into the tree, because what's the relationship we have with them too. That is why.
So do we know what interface the containerized plugin is going to support? Because if that's going to change, then people have to move from Flex to the new interface. And there's some overhead there.
So far, the interface is looking very similar. We've got attach, detach, mount, unmount, which we're calling publish, unpublish instead, and create, delete. We're unsure of what the backwards compatibility implications are going to be between the current iteration of Flex and that. Once we get a more formal implementation, we'll have a better idea.
Okay, thanks.
So if I understand, the externalized plugin will exist side by side with Flex. Is that what the deal is?
We don't know yet. It could be a iteration of Flex where we take this new interface and we morph Flex into to basically comply with that interface. In which case it would basically be an iteration of Flex. If we can do that without breaking existing drivers, that's probably the path that we'd want to go down. It's also possible that we may create a separate, I don't know if you want to call it Flex 2 or something, and keep the existing iteration of Flex and keep them both side by side if we find that backwards compatibility would be broken too severely. That way you could have the new version of Flex and the old version of Flex. We probably want to call them different things, but that remains to be worked out.
Okay, and the externalized API will support all the existing APIs, such as attach, detach, or?
Yes, so far that's the plan.
All right.
So, Saad, you mentioned that
it has to support attach and detach, right? Like even when we're certain that, so many things wouldn't work if it didn't.
Saad, you mentioned that create and delete is going to be part of the CVI. if that's the case, does it mean that dynamic provisioning would route the provisioning calls through the same Flex plugin?
Yes. So I think you're getting at whether you can have multiple provisioners for the same plugin, essentially. I think we kind of had this tension in the existing plugin system, right, where you could have multiple provisioners because provisioners could be external from the driver plugin themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. So far, it is planned to be part of the plugin interface. That said, nothing is final yet, and we're going to open up the design probably in a few weeks to a wider audience, and that's probably something you can bring up at that point.
I have a proof of concept external provisioner that uses the same call out to a script that Flex would use. So it basically calls a shell script with provision and a shell script with delete.
Okay.
Just, could be used as a stopgap until we figure out exactly if we want the API calls into Flex volume plugin or we want to do the actual provisioning with Flex.
Just curious, what would your concern be if it was a one-to-one mapping between plugin and provisioner?
It's tough to scale. So how do you get the properties to the provision? I guess you could use storage class, and then you'd have the Flex plugin name.
Yeah. So I like if the plugin exposes an arbitrary set of parameters, and those parameters can be set by storage classes. Then I don't see the need for more than one provisioner per volume provider. And you could still have the flexibility of exposing different types of storage through storage classes. All of that is already built into Kubernetes. But I wonder if there's really a need to have multiple provisioners for a single volume plugin.
No, well, if you had multiple things implemented through Flex, so if you had multiple volume drivers that were both using the Flex driver.
Multiple plugins that are part of the same driver?
Well, not the same driver. You could have, I don't know, you could have two different file systems that are both using Flex as the volume driver type. We'd have to lay this out. So yeah. It's hard to me to think.
That's okay. So we could take this offline and discuss it somewhere else. I was just curious. Back to you, Michelle.
Okay, so next on the agenda, looks like Jeff is going to talk about the E2E work.
Yeah, hi, this is Jeff. My phone battery's died. I couldn't connect through Zoom, and so I'm on the phone. But I put some links in the meeting notes. But what Brad's comment might have changed some things here. My understanding was that the move was toward out of tree, and I didn't really know how Flex fit into that. But it sounded like Brad said that Flex is the preferred approach. But at a high level, my notes there, or the reason I added something to the agenda, was to get a consensus or at least a feeling from the community on the urgency of proceeding with an E2E framework that works for flex volumes and or out of tree, so that storage providers have, it's easy for them to create end-to-end tests. There needs to be a way to get those tests run and hopefully automated in CI, but I thought it would be important to have a good framework established so that it's easy to plug in new storage providers test cases to ensure that that their storage works as expected and there's no regressions as things move forward. That's sort of it at a high level. We have an example. There's a link there. There's an NFS example of an end-to-end test, but there's not anything that's really generic yet.
Cool. This is exactly the kind of discussions we should be having. we should be having them hand in hand with the actual design of the external provisioner work. That way testing is not an afterthought. Testing and certification should be something that we think about throughout the process. So I'm glad you brought it up. So the designs is where I think we're going to open it up to the broader community in the next few weeks. And Jeff and Aaron, if you guys could be involved with that and kind of push the testing and certification angle of it, that would be great.
Yeah, that was kind of our next step with the ED testing was certification process to bring it full circle. So perfect.
Cool. Anything else?
That sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good. And we'll plug in it. And I'll try to also work more with Brad and other members on getting myself to have a better understanding of the trade-offs between Flex and out of tree and sort of where we think we're going forward. I would like to try to represent testing in the design of this feature.
Sounds good.
All right, great. So next we have Simon talking about Storage OS volume plugin.
Yeah, hi. So you can hear me. So I know it's really bad timing. It didn't work out, but we got our volume plugin finished. So I guess my question is, should I keep rebasing it throughout the 1.6 work, or should I just leave it for now?
So code freeze for 1.6 was earlier this week on Monday. And since this didn't make it, it's not going to be part of 1.6. The next release, 1.7, is you're welcome to try to be part of that. Code freeze is going to be lifted probably in about 3 weeks for the main branch, at which point, if you want to try to get this in, that's perfectly fine. But during that period, even if this gets approved, it will not be merged.
No, that's fine. It was more a question around whether I should just keep rebasing it, or if I should wait for all the flux of 1.6 to
Gotcha.
settle.
Yeah, I would wait for things to settle because there's going to be a lot of churn, and at least until code freeze is lifted, at that point, probably start rebasing and pushing forward more actively.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So I have 2 questions. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
I have 2 questions around some of the release stuff. We had a fairly substantial pull request for some rework of the attached detached controller. Basically, the bug is if the attached detached controller goes down and then comes back up, it doesn't remember its previous state and things basically go crazy. The change was pretty beefy, and we didn't make it in by the feature freeze, unfortunately. But I'm, it's nasty enough of a bug that I'm wondering if we should try to get this in as a bug fix. Because it is kind of technically a bug fix, but at the same time, we had some concerns on our side that, you guys were somewhat the SME on the attached detached controller, and we could reach maybe a 75-80% confidence on it. But
so how encapsulated? You want to try to squeeze this into 1.6?
That's what we're not sure about. It would take some review cycles, probably from SOD.
So here's my rule of thumb so by the way, I'm going to tell you what I tell the people on my team right now about things like this. And by the way, I'm being fully transparent. So the first question I've got is how encapsulated is it? Is this something where if we fix this bug, because we've been soaking this code for so long, like the whole repo, what is the chance that we could have adverse side effects outside of this area? And then the other one is, how do we have confidence that what we did in this bug fix actually doesn't introduce any more new problems even within this area? How good is the testing in this area? And then lastly, what is the impact of not doing it?
Okay, so the impact is whenever, we usually get about 2 or 3 bugs per release that are related to this. Someone's node goes down, then it comes back up, and none of their volumes are attached to the right thing, and they have to mainly go and kill everything and bring it back up. So it's somewhat of an early bug. As far as the confidence on the code, we've first off, we would like Scott, to take a real deep look at it, make sure everything looks good and checks out. But secondly, we'd also like to, do some capacity testing on it, load testing, to make sure that it works well under heavy load and that we haven't introduced any weird deadlocks or race conditions. But beyond that, it does touch the attached detached controller, which is pretty cool to everything that has some storage, so it's not without risk.
So here's my thinking of it. First off, as you know, Saad is one of my favorite people on the planet.
Yes.
I also was quite happy to see that Jan has been really gaining a lot of trust also in Jing and her knowledge of the attached detached controller. And so I want to make sure that we don't always overburden Saad with all this stuff, and that we also spread the knowledge as much as possible. I know Jan knows this path really well too. Is he the author of this bug fix, by the way, Brad? Or
no, we had Tomasz author it. We've had Jan review it pretty deeply, and Jing's looked at it, and she's left plenty of comments. But we really, it's one of those things where we want as much feedback as possible so that we're comfortable.
So if it's that fundamental, I guess I have two questions. One, it feels to me like this is something that we could, add more testing, especially at scale, and possibly think of a candidate for a patch release. If, basically, here's my thinking. Have more testing so that we're more confident with it. Because I don't think we're going to get that confidence in the next, 2 weeks. Because, after 2 weeks from now, because the whole thing is supposed to basically freeze, really, really soon, like March 22nd, right? So, a week beforehand, no one in the right mind will let us do this.
It's already frozen.
Well, it's frozen, but, for bug fixes, right? But
Right.
It sounds like this is one where we won't have the confidence ourselves to ask about it in at least a week. And then probably a week after that, you'd have time to review it and everything else. So I feel like this one won't make 1.6.0. I do wonder if it's something that can, given enough confidence and research and effort, consider for a patch release, because we have done things in patch releases that are based on stability, even if they're something big like this in the past, especially during the 1.3 days or 1.4. And I think we justified that by showing why we were confident that it wasn't going to cause any problems. And to me, this seems like a good candidate for something like that. So it maybe not have to be something that waits for 1.7, but it doesn't feel to me, and this is subjective, so I really want to hear what you have to say, that rushing this for 1.6.0 doesn't feel like the best thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Just the short turnaround in time and, the size of the change, it gives me heartburn and nightmares thinking about trying to jam this into 1.6 and then having problems right at the end.
Yeah, but I think we have wiggle room, right?
Yep. With a 1.6 as a dot release, because that's my concern, is I don't want to have to wait another 3 months to get like a really critical piece of function out there.
Right. Well, no, it's not functionality. It's
fix.
Right. Yeah. And that's exactly what the patch releases are for. And it's kind of cool. I've been reiterating this point over and over again to people. This is what I love, is that Kubernetes is really beginning to get to this point where, we have trains that leave the station, and for patches, we have trains that leave. We really need to get somewhere. So this to me feels like a good candidate for a patch release. That's it.
Okay, cool. I'll start working on that strategy then. I had one more question. We had a feature that was, gosh, I don't remember which feature it was. It was either the move storage class to GA or the mount options. And we opened it up in the feature repository, with all the necessary checklists, but something came along and closed it. We weren't sure why it got closed, or...
Do you know who?
It was the feature for mount options. So, there's a long process to get a feature in, and it's a bunch of checklists. And so we
should reopen it if that's the fact, and say it was closed accidentally. It shouldn't be closed.
Okay. So we thought maybe they closed it because it was a beta feature and they wanted another feature for GA.
It sounds like a miscommunication happened, or at least something that we don't understand.
Okay, so I'll open it up and maybe they'll yell and scream if it was really supposed to be closed.
So Brad, I really, really, really want to get mount options in 1.6.
Okay.
And my first question is it merged into the 1.6 tree? I just assumed that.
Yes.
It's already in. Yep. So it's in. So this is more about paperwork on the feature repo?
Yeah, exactly. It's just their paperwork on it got weird.
All right, so please, if you don't make progress with this and you need any help, feel free to drag me into this. I only say that because I know that Saad is way deep on things. So like, feel free to work with Saad on this. And Saad, if you feel that this needs more hugs, you know I love to hug. So please drag me in because I want Mount Options to be in.
Yep, will do.
Okay. I think it was just an error. I think a bot came along or something.
Yeah.
But it was a Google bot, so we didn't want to just be like, no, screw that, we're opening it back up.
And we've all put so much effort into this, and Brad, you've done a really good job. And is Waman on this call? Like, you know, he's been so heroic on not giving up on this. We should do this.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay, that's all the questions I had. Thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you, Brad. I miss you. It's been a long time.
Yeah, I know. We need to get our face-to-face going again here in the next month or so.
Speaking of which, last item on the agenda, Michelle?
Yeah, so I guess for the face-to-face meeting, we have Dell EMC that's proposing a date. Do we have someone from Dell EMC that could talk more about
Steve Wong here. We need a little bit of leeway to secure the facility, but we have that corporate briefing center in Santa Clara. So we've offered to host it there during the first week of April. I think we've been talking about that specific week period off and on. And I'm nominating the Wednesday and Thursday, but probably the other couple of days during that week, I could get the company.
Could we do the
like
second week of April? This is just a personal, I'll be out the first week of April. I don't know if it's a conflict for anybody else. It's the week after QCON EU. If we could do the second week of April, it'll work perfectly for me.
And Saad keeps missing the face-to-faces too, which is just so not cool.
Okay, I'll look into it. I know some of the people on our side have DoctorCon coming up in mid-April.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Don't block on me. Just if first week works, let's do that.
Okay, I'll have to check, but are we confirmed that either first or second is a good time to have it and that we're ready for it in that
The
time?
second week of April is right before Easter. I don't know if that.
Right.
So how does the meeting this week? 2 days, a week?
Why don't we start the agenda for it ASAP, and then maybe people will know if they want to attend or not.
Yeah. So first off, it's so much fun. Who wouldn't? And second off, yeah, like Saad, can you not make that first week of April, or are you just going to be?
Yeah, I'm going to be on vacation that first week of April. So.
Vacation? Who lets you go on vacation? Dude? You gotta find your boss. Yeah, let's do this over email. You know, we always, bring it up here, do it over email, then try to massage dates. I admit, like, there's just a heartful part of me that wants Saad to go because he keeps missing it. But we do what we gotta.
Hey, can't we push like one more week? Is it like something has to be done?
I think DoctorCon is what people were worried about.
We can do after.
Yeah, DoctorCon and Easter, because people with families might have things going on going into the tail end of that week.
Are a week early?
That'll be QCON EU week, so that's not going to work. So let's just say first week of April. I'll see if I can dial in. Otherwise, let's not block on that. And we can take it offline. Steve, do you want to send an email to the storage SIG as first week is the proposed date and see what folks say?
Okay, I'll do that.
Cool. And feel free to get an agenda started as well, similar to last time.
Okay.
Thank you for volunteering a place again. It's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great place.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks, Michelle.
Oh, one more minor before we get off. I'm sorry for being late to these meetings so much. I've had some family schedules that prevent me from coming on time. And so please don't take it as any lack of interest or participation in the SIG.
No worries. Glad you're here.
I've been traveling a lot and have not been as available on Slack. But please, the gates are open and I miss everybody. So that's it.
Awesome. Great. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Take
Bye-bye.